You think it's just aging, but it could be this Parkinson's signal. Your handwriting got smaller. You noticed it a few months ago but told yourself it was nothing. Maybe you were tired. Maybe you were just rushing. But then it happened again. And again. And now you sit there looking at a note you wrote and you barely recognize it as your own. That is not aging. That is a warning sign that most people miss for years. And by the time they finally hear the word Parkinson's, the disease has already been progressing quietly, invisibly, stealing small pieces of normal life one by one. Today, I want to talk about something that could change everything for you or for someone you love, because the earlier you recognize what is happening, the more options you have. And that window, that critical window of time, matters more than most people realize. My name is James, and on this channel we talk about Parkinson's disease the way it actually feels to live with it, not just the textbook version. If you are new here, welcome. If you have been with us for a while, you already know that we do not sugarcoat things and we do not make false promises. What we do is give you real, science-backed information that you can actually use. So let's get into this, because what I am about to share with you is something that neurologists see over and over again, and it is something that far too many families miss until it is much later than it needed to be. Here is the thing about Parkinson's disease that most people do not understand. It does not start with tremors. That is the image everyone has, the shaking hands, the visible movement problems. But the brain changes that cause Parkinson's begin years, sometimes more than a decade, before those motor symptoms ever appear. And during that long silent period, there are signals. Real, measurable, documented signals. The problem is that those signals look so much like ordinary life, like getting older, like stress, like a bad night of sleep, that almost nobody connects the dots until it is too late to act early. So, what are those signals? Let me tell you about the one that researchers consider among the most telling, and it is something you have probably never heard discussed anywhere outside of a specialist's office. It is called micrographia. It is when your handwriting gradually becomes smaller and smaller without you consciously trying to make it that way. The letters get cramped. The words drift downward on the page. The signature that used to fill a whole line now sits in a tiny cluster of marks that barely looks like a name. And the person writing it often does not even notice the change because it happens so gradually. But here is what changes everything when you understand micrographia. It is not a hand problem. It is not arthritis. It is not weakness in the fingers. It is a brain problem. Specifically, it is a sign that the motor control centers in the brain are losing the signal strength they need to maintain consistent movement. And that exact same mechanism, that exact same loss of signal, is what eventually shows up as the tremors, the stiffness, the slow movement that most people associate with Parkinson's. Micrographia is not a harmless quirk. It is the brain telling you something is changing, and most people ignore it for years. Now, I want to pause here for a second and be honest with you. Noticing small handwriting does not automatically mean someone has Parkinson's. Other conditions can cause similar changes. Stress, certain medications, and other neurological issues can all affect motor control. This is not about creating panic. This is about awareness, because the families who catch these early signals and bring them to a neurologist are the ones who get more time to plan, more time to benefit from treatment, and more time to live well with a diagnosis rather than being blindsided by it at a late stage. And that difference in time is not small. It can be measured in years of better quality of life. So let me ask you something directly. Think about the people you care about most. When did you last actually look at their handwriting? When did you last pay attention not just to what they wrote, but to how they wrote it? Most of us communicate through phones and keyboards now. The handwritten note, the birthday card, the grocery list on a piece of paper. Those moments are rarer than they used to be. And that means this particular early signal is easier than ever to miss. I want you to think about this, and I want you to tell me in the comments below, have you or someone you love noticed any changes in handwriting recently? It does not have to be dramatic. Even subtle changes are worth mentioning here, because someone in this community might recognize what you are describing and help you understand what to do next. Now, handwriting is just one piece of this, because what most people do not realize is that micrographia rarely arrives alone. It usually travels with other changes that people have also been explaining away as normal aging, and when you see these things together, that is when you need to pay attention. The first thing that often accompanies changes in handwriting is a reduced arm swing when walking. You might notice that one arm does not swing naturally as someone walks. It stays closer to the body. The movement looks slightly stiff or mechanical on one side. This is one of the earliest motor signs that neurologists look for, and most families never notice it because they are not looking for it. The second thing is what researchers call hypomimia. It is a reduction in facial expression. The face becomes slightly less animated. The smile that used to come easily starts to look more effortful, more delayed. People around the person might describe them as seeming more distant or harder to read emotionally, when in reality the brain is simply having more difficulty sending the rapid signals that produce natural facial movement. Family members sometimes interpret this as depression or withdrawal. And sometimes depression is actually part of the picture too, because depression is one of the most common non-motor symptoms of early Parkinson's, often appearing years before any movement issues become obvious. And here is the third thing, the one that is probably hardest to talk about: sleep. Specifically, something called REM sleep behavior disorder. Under normal circumstances, when you enter deep dream sleep, your brain essentially paralyzes your muscles so that you do not act out your dreams. In people with early Parkinson's, that system can start to break down. The person begins to physically move during dreams. They might kick, punch, shout, or thrash around while still asleep. They often wake up having no memory of it, but their partner notices. This is not just a sleep problem. Studies have shown that REM sleep behavior disorder is one of the strongest predictors of Parkinson's disease that we currently have. People who experience it have a significantly elevated chance of developing Parkinson's within the following decade. And yet, most people who have it have no idea it is connected to anything other than a bad night of rest. Now, I want you to sit with that for a moment. Small handwriting, reduced arm swing, a face that has become harder to read, disrupted sleep with physical movement during dreams. None of these things individually screams Parkinson's. Each one alone sounds like something you could chalk up to stress or age or a busy life. But together, they form a pattern. And that pattern has a name, and that pattern responds to early intervention in ways that late-stage diagnosis simply cannot. This is where I need to be very direct with you. If any of this is sounding familiar, if you are nodding along because you recognize these things in yourself or in someone you love, the next step is not to wait. The next step is not to see if it gets worse. The next step is to get a referral to a movement disorder specialist, which is a neurologist who specializes specifically in conditions like Parkinson's disease. Not a general practitioner, not a general neurologist, a movement disorder specialist. The difference in diagnostic precision between a generalist and a specialist in this area can be enormous, and it can determine whether you get the right evaluation or get told to come back in 6 months if things get worse. I know that making that call can feel frightening. I know that as long as you have not heard an official diagnosis, there is a part of you that can keep hoping it is something else. But here is what I have learned from watching hundreds of people navigate this disease. The ones who go early are the ones who have more choices. They have access to the latest treatments. They have time to make lifestyle changes that research now shows can meaningfully slow disease progression. They have time to connect with specialists before the disease advances. They get to make decisions from a position of knowledge rather than scrambling to catch up after years of progression that might have been slowed. And speaking of lifestyle changes, this is something I want to spend a moment on because it is deeply underestimated. Exercise, not gentle walks, vigorous, intentional exercise. The research on exercise and Parkinson's disease is some of the most compelling data we have in this field. Studies have shown that regular aerobic exercise, the kind that gets your heart rate up, combined with strength and coordination training, can actually influence the rate at which the disease progresses. The brain has a remarkable ability, especially in earlier stages, to adapt and compensate. Exercise appears to support that process in ways that no medication currently available can replicate. This is not a small effect. This is a meaningful, documented, reproducible effect that researchers are still working to fully understand, but that is already informing treatment recommendations at major Parkinson's centers around the world. So, if you're watching this and you or someone you love is in an earlier stage of this disease, or even in that uncertain space where something feels off, but there is no diagnosis yet, the message is this: move. Move consistently. Move with intensity appropriate to your current ability. Walk fast, swim, ride a stationary bike, do boxing classes designed for Parkinson's patients, dance, lift weights. Do anything that challenges your cardiovascular system and your coordination, and do it regularly, because that time is not wasted. That time is working for you at a biological level in ways that we are only beginning to fully appreciate. Now, I also want to address something that comes up again and again when I talk to families about this topic: the fear of the diagnosis itself. There is a real phenomenon where people delay seeking evaluation not because they do not notice the signs, but because they are afraid of what they might find out. And I understand that fear completely. A Parkinson's diagnosis changes things. It changes how you think about the future. It changes conversations with family. It raises questions about work and independence and what life will look like years from now. Those fears are real and they are valid. But here is what I want you to hear. A diagnosis does not define a life. The people I have seen thrive after a Parkinson's diagnosis are not the ones who had the mildest cases. They are the ones who engaged actively with their care, who built strong teams of specialists, who made lifestyle changes early, who found community, and who refused to let the disease become the only story they were living. Information is not the enemy. Fear of information is the enemy. And the earlier you have accurate information, the more you can do with it. Before we wrap up today, I want to come back to something I said at the very beginning. The window of time matters. If you recognize something in yourself or in someone you care about during this video, I want you to do one thing before you close this tab. Write it down. Write down what you noticed, when you first noticed it, whether it has been getting more pronounced. Write down any other changes that have been happening that might be connected, and then make the call to schedule an evaluation. That piece of paper with your notes will make that appointment more productive. Your observations matter. Your timeline matters. The details that seem small to you can be exactly what a specialist needs to see the full picture. If this video helped you or gave you something to think about, Please subscribe to Beyond Parkinson. We publish new content every week, focused on helping people with Parkinson's and their families navigate this disease with more knowledge, more confidence, and more hope. Hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss what we put out. And please share this video with someone who needs to hear it, because the person who most needs this information is almost certainly not looking for it yet. They are explaining away the signs. They are waiting to see if things get worse. They need someone in their life to show them this. Be that person for them. One last thing before I go. Leave me a comment below. Tell me, was there a sign you noticed early that turned out to be connected to a Parkinson's diagnosis? Or are you watching this because something has been bothering you and you are trying to understand what it means? I read every comment on this channel. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. And as always, please remember that nothing in this video is a substitute for professional medical advice. Every person's situation is different, and the only way to know what is happening in your specific case is to work with qualified medical professionals who can evaluate you directly. Take care of yourself. I will see you in the next one.